So in my writing process, I almost always start from the piano with just pencil and paper because I think it gives me a lot of freedom. I think sometimes if you start in the computer, it starts to sort of limit you, and if you're already playing with particular sounds, it can kind of box you into an idea. I like to at least just sketch out the ideas first here as what's the melody, what are the chords for this, and I'll write it out at the piano. So then once I'm working inside a sequencer on the computer, then I can really flesh this out. And sometimes maybe I'll go back and forth, but then I start to pull the full sketch up and I get that mocked up in the sequencer so I can hear everything playing back exactly the way I intend it. Sometimes when I write, you might be thinking more vertically, which is thinking more in the chords and kind of the harmonic structure, or sometimes you might be thinking more horizontally, where you're kind of led by the melody. You write a melody and then come up with your chords after. And sometimes both ideas come to you at the same time, and you sort of hear it all at once, and you're sort of chasing like, oh, that's not the right chord, but and you're trying to kind of figure out what you're hearing. So often I think in the kind of overall construction of a piece, and I may even draw out, it looks like a child's, drawing of a sketch of a map of a piece. It just gives me a visual representation, very loose, kind of scratched onto the page. And I think part of this overall process is really trying to lie to yourself that you're not actually writing and that you're editing, because it's much easier mentally to be editing something than it is to be writing fresh. So as a string player, I tend to kind of think from strings first. The strings, especially in orchestral music, are sort of my main body when I'm writing. And then I start to think of how other colors can go on top of that. At the end of the vocal session, we tried a lot of sort of wild ideas, which would then be processed later, and some of the stuff, didn't make the final cut, but we found some really interesting textures that made their way to the end of the album.